Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. So we are live, and we are live on YouTube. That is on my page, a YouTube channel, JPC Jacob Ntuntu. Actually, you can check that, and we are also live on Facebook. That is on theologian JPC Ntuntu, and on JPC and Loved Ntuntu, JPC and Loved Ntuntu, and on theologian JPC Ntuntu. I'm here with Dr. Njovu again, Dr. Ndrovu, who is a specialist in psychology and a minister of the gospel, and also a political leader. A great blessing, whom I've known for some years now. And we are dealing with today, trying to conclude on the subject which we have done. This is the third week on preventing and healing from infidelity. We are doing the last part, but the beauty is we're just from talking, and this is a fight for the family program, and so we are addressing all those vices that affect families, that are threatening the family life, that are threatening marriages, and are threatening family, and threatening how we raise our children. And so it becomes critical and becomes very, very important that we address these matters. And so we continue to bring you this program at the lunchtime every Monday. And come next week, we are taking it to another level, or we are bringing in a new topic, and we'll be dealing with alcohol and drug addiction, and how those things affect families and affect marriages, and how people can recover actually from alcohol and drug addiction, and live a normal life that builds a family. So this will be very interesting, and we want you to remain dedicated to listening to this program, Fight for the Family. Every Monday we come to you at 1300 hours lunchtime for Central and Southern Africa, which is 1200 hours British Summer Time, and which is 1100 hours GMT, and depending on the parts of the world where you are. But this particular program is designed to speak in the family, and specifically to speak in the marriage, and to help marriages be stable, because we cannot have a stable society until we have stable families, and we cannot have stable families until we have stable marriages. Welcome, Dr. Njovu. Just a few introductory remarks from you, and just some words as we begin to look at this program. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, theologian. It's really a wonderful program. And I would like just to appreciate you and welcome all the viewers. And I would like to ask everybody to tag along somebody, because we are going to be discussing things that are very imperative, to taking your marriage forward. As already alluded to, I am a cognitive behavioral therapist, psychologist, if you may wish. I am also a minister of the gospel, of course, and I'm also a political leader. I am leading a party that is called Eco Forum Government, and I'm the president there. So I'm actually speaking from different perspectives this particular afternoon, and I'm so grateful that I'm here, theologian, that we can talk about fighting for one of the most powerful institutions if not the most powerful institution on the surface of the earth. May I actually reiterate that a marriage is so imperative and it's so important in the sense that it's foundational to many other institutions that anybody may actually think of. So I'm so very grateful that we are here today, and yeah, we're going to look at very important aspects of fighting for your marriage. So please tag somebody along, let somebody know, and feel free to leave us a comment in the commentary, because we are here to discuss this matter and ask us questions as much as you can. Thank you. Over to you, theologian.
Thank you. So today we are dealing with the danger of emotional affairs. Emotional affairs. Because we realize that from experience, actually, as a minister of the gospel and marriage counselor, and also through interactions with different men of God and Christians, it has become clear to me that a lot of marriages have been threatened by infidelity. And some of the people that I have personally dealt with, and that I think you may have dealt with also, and from various experiences, you realize that many people indulge in adultery without necessarily planning it from the beginning. There is a place where it begins from, and then it begins to grow and grow and grow until somebody reaches a stage where they will not control it, and they fall, and then they find they are fallen. And like you said at the beginning, that many times we have condemned people that we should have helped. And so there are so many conditions that we identified in the first video that we did. And I want to encourage those of you that have not watched it to watch it, where we talked about different reasons why somebody may indulge in adultery, and why Christians end up committing adultery, regardless of the clear teaching of the Bible, that we should keep the marriage bed pure and that God will judge the adulterers. But still people fall in it. And so it starts from somewhere. It starts from emotional affairs. It starts from careless conversations with the opposite sex. It starts from things that look innocent, like innocent greetings. How are you? How are you doing? Just this conversation you're having with another man, with another woman who is not your wife, who is not your husband, the man who is not your husband. This careless conversation begins to build and begins to grow. You begin to be fond of them. You begin to enjoy spending time with them for no good reason. You are not dealing with anything serious. So that relationship becomes informal and it becomes careless. At the end of the day, you find yourself in an emotional affair where you are now sharing love. You're talking about love. I love you. I miss you. You begin to interact at that level, and you are breaking those defenses. And we see that it is there in scripture. For example, in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, from verse 2 to verse 6, when Paul is saying that husbands should meet the needs of their wives, and wives should meet the needs of their husbands. And then he makes a very important statement that even when you fast, you should fast for a short time and then get back together. He says, so that Satan does not tempt you. So that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. So the lack of self-control is where these things begin from, emotional affairs, these conversations. The wisdom is not there to protect ourselves and to protect our marriages from allowing the spirit of adultery to enter it. And it starts from those emotional affairs. And so we want to address the danger of emotional affairs, careless greetings, and these emotional affairs with social media. They have now gone into, you may just pick somebody on social media. I actually dealt with a particular
Mhm.
situation where this woman ended up indulging in adultery, a Christian,
Mhm.
and just by being in a group on
That's
what
right.
on Facebook, and begin to talk to this a man, and they begin to chat, and then it becomes an emotional affair. Before she realized it, they were meeting physically, and it was a sexual event that threatened the marriage. Thank God she had to confess, and the marriage survived, and everything is okay. She has changed. But those are the experiences that people have just on social media. Hi, and those things. The danger of emotional affair. So the first is, what is an emotional affair?
An emotional affair. What is an emotional affair? That's actually a very, very good question, because you see, when people are in a relationship, they always just refer to a relationship as something that has to do with meeting with each other and having some kind of physical interaction. But we rarely realize that the foundational basis of a relationship is emotional. There is an emotional foundational basis for any relationship. Before you could begin to even get attracted to somebody, you first of all emotionally get connected with them. That is why initially they used to use words like a soul tie. Those words were not meant to be spiritualized and be demonized. Those words were meant to be psychological words that mean then that if you begin to have some kind of emotional connection with somebody or communication, what happens is that you end up having a link with them. You practically begin to think like them, you begin to think on the same wavelength with them. So what happens with emotional attachments is that we get to a point where a person begins to complement us emotionally without even our realization it is happening. And in most given cases, when people get into this emotional attachments or emotional connection, they don't even realize it's going on. That's why we use the terms that I used last time as in social intercourse, because every time you are engaged in undirected, unintentional, as well as undeliberate kind of emotional engagement, you end up with what we call social intercourse. You are having intercourse, you're having intimacy. And the problem is that it's not intentional, it is not directed, it is not in any way guided. So what happens is that every other thing is able to come out of that relationship. May I also reiterate that that's how even criminals get to engage others. If criminals want you to be part of the gang, they don't tell you they are thieves. They don't tell you that they are going to be robbing somebody a particular night. All they do is to create a sense of emotional attachment with you. They'll take you somewhere to a drinking place and they'll be drinking with you without even mentioning anything about what they do. Eventually, what will happen when they say, let's go and rob somebody, you will be so surprised that you'll be in the forefront and you'll be leading the way. Also, people that would want you to begin falling in some form of extramarital affairs, they don't actually tell you that's their intention. They may even be quoting Bible scriptures. They may actually even be doing it with prayer. But this is unintentional, it is not directed, it is not guided, so you are not sure of where it is going to end up with. So before I give it back to you, may I say that any bus that you jump on whose destination is not fully communicated is a wrong bus. So any communication that you get involved in with an opposite sex, which has no sense of destination, and the destination is not communicated, know that it will end up in a place which you never even expected. And that's how people that thought were powerful, people that thought they were emotionally intelligent, ended up falling into particular extramarital affairs without even realization, because there are certain aspects that we're going to talk about, such as compensation. When you begin to get involved with somebody, emotionally. What happens at some given point in time, you will have a sense of compensating them for the time that they have given you. Now, in that compensation, you end up beginning to sleep with them. So most of the times, you don't even do it for love. You do it for compensation. Sometimes you do it to numb the pain, because when you're talking to somebody about your problems, especially intimate problems, is with somebody that is of the opposite sex, you will end up beginning to talk about problems that you're going through in your marriage. And the only way now that you're going to numb the pain of what you're talking about, because remember, when you are talking to somebody about what you're going through, you are reliving the situation. In other words, you are re-experiencing the situation through your talking with somebody emotional. So you are feeling the pain. And the only person that you feel is going to help you deal with the problem or numb the pain is the person that you are talking to. As a result, you fall into sin as a way of numbing their pain that you are feeling as you are reliving the problem. So these are some of the things that are very important as we do the introduction to this. So we are not saying that engagement with the opposite sex in terms of discussions is wrong. What we are saying basically is that be intentional and be deliberate. Determine the direction of your conversation. If your conversation has no mapped out destination, don't engage, disengage, because you cannot carry fire on your chest and expect not to be burnt. Because you must understand that, especially we as opposite sex are wired in such a way that we are meant to complement each other. So if a woman naturally is talking to a particular man, she will find a way that that man will compliment her. It's a natural psychological thing that happens within all of us. That's why you'll find that if you jump on a bus, if a guy comes in and he trips, you won't even feel like helping him. But if a woman walks in and then she trips, you as a guy, you will quickly run to her and say, "Are you okay, sister? Is everything okay?" It's not necessarily that at that particular point in time you have ill intentions, but there is an aspect in us that wants to complement the opposite side. Now, if that conversation you're engaging into is not properly directed, you will end up with the easiest thing, which is involvement in sexual kind of situation that you will regret later on. So I'm going to try and bring in certain new words today, such as are going to help us understand how this begins to happen. Because remember, most people that have fallen into adulterous situations were not themselves bad people. We should really qualify that. The people don't fall into certain problems because they are bad people or because that's who they are. Anybody can fall into that. And that's why I said there is a remedy to that. There is also a way out. We do not have to write people off because they have sinned differently from us. We need to be compassionate. We need to be understanding. We need to also begin to talk about these things, because what you never talk about, you will experience in privacy. But whatever you publicly talk about, you are able to avoid it from happening in privacy. So it's important to have these kind of things. And I'll talk about all this and how you need to learn to appreciate certain aspects about the opposite sex in the presence of your partner. Because if you don't learn to appreciate certain aspects about the opposite sex in the presence of your partner, chances are that you'll fulfill those kind of feelings in privacy, and either you begin to watch things you're not supposed to watch, or you begin to long to have that experience. For example, if you are looking at some guys right now, we've got a whole lot of ushers in the churches, we've got a whole lot of guys that have got muscles, and God bless them. You know, it's not for all of us. You and I are not meant for muscles, but you know, there are these young men that just know how to put up muscles and everything, and they come in. And here is the wife of the church goer. She is looking at that, and she's never taken time to talk to their husband or their boyfriend or their fiancé to say, "Wow, look at that. How I wish one day you can have that." The moment you take it out in the right way, you will never experience it in the wrong way. Can I say that again? What you take out in a rightful way, you will never desire to experience in a wrong way. So telling even your husband to say, "Hey, baby, you've got a one pack. This guy has
Yeah.
got a six-pack. How I wish one day you can have a six-pack. That's
Yeah.
a way of dealing with it. But if you conceal that thing, you will
Yeah.
eventually desire to
Mm.
experience it. So
Wow.
that's what I can
Yeah.
say in the foundational basis.
Great. So there is a remedy to these things, and there is a way out. And
Yes.
nobody should think that they can't do this. And
Yes.
those that have not done it should never be overconfident. And those that
Yes.
have fallen into it should
Yes.
never condemn themselves that they can't get out. So for those,
Yes.
and that's why we are bringing this program on Fight for the Family. It is to
Yes.
ensure that those that have not gone through this path are protected from going through it. And those
Yes.
that have gone through it can get out. They should not live in it. And that's why we are advocated. I think we'll talk about it later, that one of the ways to really get out is to come out clean, is to be naked to your husband, naked to your wife, and deal with these issues openly. And like Doc has said, that what you don't deal with openly in a right way, you're going to deal with it secretly in a wrong way.
Yes.
Great. And a compensation. Maybe we move slightly towards that. As you deal with the issue of compensation, here is a person who is compensating. This woman, a married woman, goes into adultery with this man, probably married man. She didn't really plan for it that way. But because of the time that she's been given, the attention, the admiration, the affirmation, because of what this man has been to her, she develops a feeling of compensation, like she has to compensate him with indulging in sex with him, to just appreciate him, or to compensate him for that thing that he has been offering. And many women get trapped into these emotional affairs where they feel they have to compensate them. How can that be prevented, and how can it be dealt with? And I want to thank you, Sister Kezia Mashinkela Singoy. Thank you, my sister, for following us. She's following us from the United States of America, and she says so much wisdom here. Thank you so much, my dear sister. And all of you that are following, please engage us. You can leave a comment. You can raise a question, mention somebody. Share this video to as many people as possible, married people, both male and female, as we fight for the family. Our prayer is that we protect the marriage, because it is a stable marriage that makes a stable family. And one of the things that is wrecking marriages has been infidelity. And it is wrecking Christian marriages, especially, is our main focus. And we believe and trust God that there will be strength of the family and strength of the marriage specifically. And so let's get back. Emotional affair, and specifically with the issue of compensation, and also from an angle where is it possible that two people can actually end up indulging in adultery when they never had such intentions from the beginning, both of them? Or is it that there is always somebody who has got the intention to go that way, and then there is always somebody who is following sheepishly behind? Or is it possible that two people, male and female, who literally have no intention to do that, can actually find themselves dragged into that kind of a situation? As you deal with this question, Doc, also expound more on compensation, because on the aspect of compensation, I feel it is in most cases women that function from the angle of compensation. They are compensating a man who has been there for them when their husband was not there for them, according to the way they think, or when they have had challenges in their marriage, or maybe has just been giving them a certain attention that they have been lacking because of certain gaps in the marriage. Doc, take it up. Thank you, Sister Kenda, for mentioning people and Yeah, God
Mhm.
bless.
Thank you so very much, actually, to our followers and those of you who are commenting in the commentary. It actually shows that you want us to really take this further. May I actually reiterate a theologian that most women are not even aware of how they are wired. So it's important, even in any given instance, that we begin to communicate to them as to how they are wired. It is always said that if you give a woman food, she will make a meal out of it. If you give a woman a house, she will make a home out of it. It's their nature to compensate you for everything that you give them in a raw form. And so what happens is that most culprits that get women fall into certain things, they are aware of that fact in most given cases. And most men have a character flaw. It's not intentional. When something is a character, you don't begin to engage into it consciously. It's built up on a subconscious level, so much that on a conscious level you may not even want to fall into that, but because it's a character flaw, it begins to come from a subconscious level. It is now a nature that you cannot in any way be able to prevent. It begins just to come out. The moment you see a female, you know that you are going to do certain things. Either it's a prayer, either it's just going to be you checking on her. Consciously you are even saying to yourself, I'm not going to fall into sin, but subconsciously you are wired to layer women into that arrangement. So even though you are consciously saying you're not going to do it, you've probably heard that most people do not become successful because they are consciously wanting it. It happens from a subconscious level. We'll come to that when we talk about intelligence later on. But may I just say that most of the times when men are engaging into conversation with women, it's a conversation that will bring a certain conversion into something that you are not even aware of. So now what happens is that here is somebody that gives you a job because you have explained to him how you are suffering with your husband, things are not going on home, and all you want is to be praying. And this person probably is a church elder at church, or is a pastor, and then they connect you to somebody that gives you a job. And when they do that, they are not even consciously thinking about what they are going to do. But what happens is that along the way, you begin to even report back to them to say, thank you, God bless you, they gave me a job. And it begins like that. By the time you are going to realize, you will have a sense of wanting to compensate them. And now you know that they are not going to accept money from you. You know that they're not going to accept this and that. Then you are going to engage into some form of emotional conversation with them as a way of wanting to compensate them, which eventually then it's going to end you up in a situation where now you want to compensate them with your body. And this is not pre-planned, but it is pre-programmed. It is not pre-planned, it is pre-programmed. So we need to understand the difference between something not being pre-planned, but it is pre-programmed, because this guy is in a situation where he feels that it is not right to
Yeah.
tell somebody, to turn somebody down when they want to compensate you. So he
Yeah.
also now begins to play along. So here is a guy,
Yeah.
he knows that what he's doing is wrong, but he
Yeah.
begins to also play along. And that's what happens. If you look at most
Yeah.
of the pastors, they know that adultery is not a good thing. Sometimes they will even commit adultery with somebody they don't love. They love their
Yeah.
wife, but because
Yeah.
this woman is compensating them for the powerful prayers they did for her, so
Yeah.
now they do not want to come out as rude people. They don't want to come out as people that don't appreciate being compensated. So they are there playing along. So by the
Yeah.
time you realize something
Yeah.
happens, and the situation of Mammon and Omba, or you
Mm.
see now, begins to
Yeah.
happen. Because now each one begins to blame the other, to say, you see what has happened. This other one
Yeah.
says, you see what happens. Now the guilty also now enters into that arrangement, because somebody wanted to compensate. The other one
Yes.
didn't want to turn off the compensation. This can also happen the other way around. Here is a woman that is doing whatever she's doing from her heart for you. And then at the end of the day, it is a natural tendency in men to feel if a woman is doing something for you, she's either looking for a relationship or she's looking for the compensation. And so you end up, even if she has not suggestively come out about that, what you begin to do is that you begin to play prostitute. You know, most men, don't just blame women. Most men can play a prostitute, you know, and because this woman has been there for you. She's been sending you money, mobile money, as they call it in Zambia. And she's been doing everything for you. And you feel like, what can I do for this woman? That is now on a subconscious level. And you know that the greatest thing that you can give her is none other than yourself. And so what begins to happen? You begin to come out suggestively. You know what? I love you. And I feel that if all women were like you, I would have been married by now. Okay, how are we going that route? All of a sudden. And in most cases, when men are even using these words of love, at first they don't mean it. They feel I have to say something because women fall for love. Anything that is affectionate for women becomes, wow, this is the thing. So guys subconsciously know that if I can just tell her to say, you know what, I just appreciate you. I just love you so much for what you did for me. Is forgetting that how the woman will receive that message is different from how a man will receive it. A woman will conceive it. And everything that she conceives must give birth. She must give birth. So the words that you are engaging to speak to somebody's wife, somebody's girlfriend, somebody's partner, somebody's whatever, will at the end of the day be conceived. This is how dangerous conversations with the opposite sex that are not directed can become.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sister Keisha. You've done it as well. You're inviting people, and we are glad to see our brother and a friend, Reverend Valentine Muntali, following us
there.
From Zambia. Yes, Super Valley. Now, as you are talking, I've thought about Pikachu. In that song, Mwana wange namusonda. He makes a comment that wikatemwa tu kafusasa, wikatemwisho tu pelanondo. Don't love all these things. That in short, don't love receiving gifts from men. And these are things that will happen as a result of emotional affairs. And sometimes it may not be gifts. Like we said last time, you find that some woman commits adultery with a garden boy, with or a workmate, or you commit adultery with a workmate, or such kind of things happen in between those relationships where there is literally no material or financial benefit, but there's been an emotional benefit. And that's what I think you've referred to even in the church, where women feel they should compensate a pastor for being there for them. There is just that woman in that church. There's a pastor, actually a bishop, who said that in a church of 100 members, there are at least 5 women who want to compensate the pastor, that issue of compensation. So there is some kind of emotional attachment that people develop with you, even when you are just preaching, when you have no intention to build those attachments, or when you are providing counsel, or in all those things. But then here is a situation where you are actively involved with this man as a woman. And you just find yourself in a situation where when he asks, you are going to fail. You are not going to have the guts to refuse, because either you have been accepting the words. It may not be money. It may not be to kafusasa. It may not be utupelanondo, but it could be that you as a woman, you've made yourself vulnerable to this man who is not your husband, and you are married. He has been telling you nice words. You have been receiving words. You're beautiful. You're looking good. Every time you are preparing for work, you are dressing for that particular man, and you are doing it subconsciously. You are rushing for work and you are dressing for that particular man. I am born so that he can look at me and compliment me. The more you receive those compliments, the more you begin to conceive them and to build them. At the end of the day, There will come a time when you will ask for it. And that's why emotional affairs end up being full-blown sexual affairs. In an event where here is a man or a woman, married man, married woman, they are in these emotional affairs we have explained, as we have talked about, and they are still blind. They are hearing us there, or they may watch this video. How do you break? How do you stop it before it becomes a sexual affair? Because the best is to stop this issue. If you are in a situation where you know in your mind that when you are going for work, you are dressing for a certain man, or you are a man or a woman, you have been having these emotional conversations. You like talking to this man. You have become fond of this woman who is not your wife, who is not your husband. You have become fond of each other, and you are enjoying some kind of conversations you are having. You are laughing together. When they send you an emoji, you send back and you laugh together. Or you are even meeting somewhere for a drink and you are saying, no, me, I cannot commit adultery. But you are enjoying the company of that man. You are enjoying the company of that woman. Or you are enjoying the text messages and calls that you are making to each other, which are just about, I'm checking on you. I like you. I love you. And one day they'll say, I want you to reciprocate. I'm waiting for a day when you will say, I love you too. And you have reached those levels and you feel that it's okay because you are telling yourself that you will not get physical with this man or you will not get physical with this woman. But then you are hearing this wisdom and you are saying, how do I stop it? Because I know I'm already in this emotional affair. So how do I stop it? How do I stop myself from getting physical with this woman or from getting physical with this man now that I have identified that I'm already in an emotional affair? So how do I stop it? How does somebody do that?
First and foremost, I would like I said earlier on, to speak from different perspectives. You must understand that this particular challenge in our country is a reality, and it is something that churches would rather not preach about. And in most given cases, they have condemned and blamed, and because of that, people have been doing a lot in secrecy, including the people who preach against it. Actually, most of the times, the more they preach against it, the more they find themselves falling into it. And you would actually wonder. We need to also look at what is called the socio-economic challenges in any given situation. Socio-economic challenges also have a bearing on this particular challenge, because socio-economic situations tend to create a cultural of appreciation that is never taken into consideration at some given point in time. For example, the social economic challenges in our country have made it very possible for people not to survive from what they do, but from what others will do for them. I don't care how powerful you are, including the pastors that may be big pastors driving big cars themselves at some given point in time will be victims of the social economic challenges, because there'll be people that would want to wire money directly to the pastor. It doesn't have to go through the finance department. It doesn't have to go through the treasurer. And it feels good because they'll bring the money directly. I remember some pastor came to me and said, I've got women that bring money directly to me, and quoted the scripture from the book of Luke chapter 8. And I said, you are not Jesus and you better stop it. Because you see, when these women take the envelopes directly to the pastor, it doesn't go through the treasurer. The attachment that will be there, you as a pastor, you'll be the one that will begin to solicit for even sexual favors. Not because you are a wicked man, not because you are weak. It is simply because you feel like they have done all this. I've done all the praying for them. What more can I give them? I do not have as much to give them back. So now you end up making yourself vulnerable. The next time now you begin to go in a muscle t-shirt, even trying to excuse yourself by saying it's a modern world. But you know that it's not about the modernization. It's about the layering them into some activity. That's why you're doing that. And it's happening on a subconscious level, because because these things happen on a subconscious level where you are not even consciously aware you are compensating for them. So when you are with them, you change your language from your usual spiritual language to a very sexual oriented language. Hey sister, even the voice changes. Hi sister, I was just thinking about you. Hey man, I was just thinking. And the sister begins to get that voice that she has never heard in a long time. And she begins now to replay that voice when she's going to sleep. By the time they meet tomorrow, they find themselves falling into something. But the question is, how do we break away from this? I wanted to first of all establish what happens before I can talk about how you break away from it. Because most of us may not even be aware that we are trapped in one way or another. Some of us may be futuristically trapped. Right now, where we are operating from, we are not aware there's a trap of this nature, but futuristically, it is already happened. Because remember, the destination is already worked out before you even get into a plane. So don't begin to say, well, you know what, my church is so small, I've only got 5 people, or my circle is not so big, I've just got few people. You are not aware that there are things that are happening there that are preparing you for a future event of falling into some of these things. So you are not even aware. Your self-esteem is already eroded away right now. So you are preparing for anybody that will come in and just raise your sense of self-esteem. So by the time you realize, you might actually become a candidate. And I must actually mention that all of us are candidates of this. Whether we like it or not, we are all candidates of these extramarital affairs. Until we begin to speak into it like that, we'll never be able to break away from it. So we must first of all be able to say we are all potential victims. Whether we like it or not, we are all potential victims of this thing. And until we begin to address it as it is, we'll never be able to find a way out. Secondly, I must actually say that you must develop awareness in anything that has to do with you breaking out of an addiction, breaking out of a certain trap is very important. And it's a word that is usually used in cognitive behavioral therapy. Awareness is very important. Until you develop an awareness in a particular area of your life, you have not yet started a journey of coming out of your addiction. It's very important. And why are we calling it an addiction? Because at some given point in time, you will realize that it is not just a behavior. It is not just something that you are doing. It becomes an addiction in the sense that after 5 to 10 minutes of doing it, you'll think, hey, it's done. I'm just going to do it for the last time. But you will not be able to realize that even tomorrow you would want to get back to it. So it becomes an addiction. And this is one thing that a lot of people are not even aware, that extramarital affairs are addictive. These are addictions. You can, look at people that are addicted to cocaine and all these other substances. Most of the times when they are on them, they will tell you how dangerous these substances are. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, I've had people brought to me that are hooked on substances, and you ask them, so how dangerous is this? And they'll tell you how dangerous it is and how people should not even indulge and be involved in this. And then you ask them, but you're addicted. And they say yes. But then you are the one that is even telling me of its dangers more than I even realize it. But how are you involved into it? They'll tell you, every time I'm doing it, I do it for the last time. So the first time you did it for the last time, yes. And then how many years has it been? 10 years. And you've been doing it for the last time. Yes. Because it's an addiction. So you have to develop awareness in order to break away from an addiction. You must be able to know how it is negatively impacting you and how this is just for a short time. It is not something that you are going to be feeding on for the rest of your life. It is something that after a few minutes, it's going to be done. So that's the first thing that you begin to realize. Number two, from awareness, you must also be able to develop what we say a sense of let me call it more or less like you have to be decisive about it, because you see, you have to develop your willpower to break out of it. Most
Yeah.
people think they just must make a random decision to come out
Yeah.
of this. It doesn't happen like that. You
Yeah.
have to develop your willpower, invest into your willpower to come out
Yeah.
of this. For example, when it
Yeah.
has begun to affect you, you're feeling now very close to this opposite sex because
Yeah.
you've been involved in conversations with them. I
Yeah.
can promise you, even when you do not have data, you will find it, even if it means
Yeah.
you're going to sell something, because remember, it's an addiction. Just the
Yeah.
same way people who
So
smoke
even
weed.
those conversations before it becomes
Yes,
sexual, they can become
yes.
addictions.
They
Just
become
like
an addiction. You
yes,
can actually deny yourself
yes,
something that you needed for the sake of taking care of a compensation. So
yeah,
now what happens is that
yeah,
if you do not begin to invest into your willpower, because there'll be
yeah,
times you are sitting, you do not have
yeah,
data, you will
yeah,
make sure that you will lie to somebody to buy you data.
yes,
Hey, I've just got a funeral. Somebody died in the village. Can you send
yeah,
me data? Because I would like to send them a message. And you know,
yeah,
there's nobody that actually died, because you want to just get back to your addiction. You
yeah,
just, before you sleep, you need
yes,
to, hi, you know what is here? And I'm just feeling like, oh, I wish you were around. So now,
yes,
your willpower, that's the first thing actually that gets defeated. It's
yes,
your ability to control self. So
yes,
your will is now captivated. That's what
yes,
happens in these conversations.
yeah,
There, you are engaging in those conversations so that you can reach a point where you no
yeah,
longer have the power over your deciding ability. So your
yeah,
ability to decide is no longer in your hands. It's now in the hands of the person that you are having conversations with. That's what happens. So
yes.
now what happens
So
is
it's like
that
you've given yourself over to that person. You have
exactly,
surrendered. So
you have surrendered,
and
because
so
whoever
without
can,
even the intention of wanting for a woman, or
no,
sometimes even for a man, without the intention of reaching that end, but
yes,
you have foolishly
yes,
handed your life over to that person. And so
exactly,
they're in control of what happens. When they say, let's go this way, you say yes. Come this
yes.
side, you say yes. Okay.
Yes, because
Yeah.
remember what I had alluded to last time.
Yes. Yes.
We as psychologists, we work from the perspective of the soul, not your
Yes.
spirit. You guys
Yes.
can work as pastors with your spirit,
Yes.
man, and everything. That is
Yes.
why the word psychology comes from the same root word soul.
And
And
so
the
yes.
soul is made of 5 components. I must
Yes.
reiterate that. It is made
Yes.
of your imaginations, it
Yes.
is made of your will, it is made
Yes.
of your mind, it is
Yes.
made of your emotions, it is
Yes.
made of your intelligence.
Yes.
Okay, five
Yes.
components.
Yeah.
Now, remember, when you begin to socially
Yes.
engage with somebody by having social intercourse,
Yes.
these 5 areas of your life will be affected. Number one,
Yeah.
your imagination. You know what your
Yes.
imagination is? Something that has not happened, but you
Yes.
begin to fathom the possibility of it happening.
Of it happening. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not that you're a bad person, it's just that your conversation will
Yes.
influence your imagination. So
Yes.
you are a fire preacher, you are a
Yes.
holy man, you are a
Yes.
wonderful wife, loved by your
Yes.
husband, but because
Yes.
of the conversation you're engaging into, your
Yes.
imagination will be affected and infected. So
Yes.
you begin to
Affected and
imagine a
infected.
garden boy. Why? Because
Yes.
every time your husband does something painful to you, you
Yes.
want to
To talk to
compensate
the
him with
garden
a
boy.
problem as you
Yes.
compensate the garden boy with
Yes.
a goodness. We're not going to
Yes.
go into
And
that.
this.
So that's your imagination. So,
Yes.
secondly, your emotions. You see,
Yes.
emotions are very strong. People are not even aware that emotions can be very strong and they can take over you. And you're
Yes.
not even aware that you're being emotionally driven into something. So,
Yeah.
emotionally can even trample your intelligence.
Yes.
Because when you are engaged into this social intercourse, you reach
Yes.
a point where you are emotionally attached.
Yes.
Like I said last time, an attachment
Yes.
is always bigger than the mail.
Yeah.
So when somebody sends a mail, hi, I was just
Yes.
thinking about you,
Taking
the
on it. Yes.
attachment to it is bigger. So you
Yes.
begin to unwrap the attachment for the whole week over
Yeah.
just the word they spoke in 1 minute. Your
Yeah.
mind, your mind
Yes.
is so very powerful that if you've done something for 7 times,
Yeah.
it's going to be repeating that. Remember, we
Yes.
said that most of the thoughts that we think are
Yes.
95% repetitive. So
Yes.
if somebody is calling you 7 times in a day, they are
Yeah.
trying to trap your mind.
Yes.
So now, if they have done it 7 times, what
Yes.
will happen is that your mind will go into a repetitive mode of
Yeah.
that kind of conversation. So if
Yeah.
somebody else tells you about the prayer meeting, you don't want to hear about the prayer meeting. You want to hear to say, sister, your wig is looking good. And this guy has trapped you.
Yes.
So
Wow.
that is the mind. So the mind now begins to go into a repetitive mode because that's how it is wired. It is to think 95% of the thoughts repetitively. Number
Yes.
4, you talk
Yes.
about your will, which is something that I was alluding to. Your willpower, which is something that determines your decisions and your ability to decide for your future possibilities and greatness, can also be trapped.
Yes.
So much that you want to come out of this. That's where the guilty comes and affects your will, because somehow now you are not able to willfully come out of this except when the other person decides. So you don't go for shots. The other guy calls for shots. You are simply a victim of passion.
Yes.
So then there is intelligence, your intelligence, and that's why we are going to talk about that. You see, you cannot be intelligent enough to resist passion. Because the moment you begin to get involved in these conversations, your intelligentsia will also be under influence. So either you talk about your emotional intelligence, you talk about your IQ and all that, it will also be affected. So it's very important. I wanted just to throw in that before I talk about your will, because your will is something that is so powerful that if you are not careful, these conversations will actually trap your willpower to come out of it. So sometimes you go for prayers to break this and it won't even be broken. Because remember, some things are not happening on a spiritual level. They're happening on a psychic level, on a soulish level. And that's where you begin to talk about the flesh. It's not the body. It is the soul.
Yes.
Please.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
There we are.
So lovely to hear also from Brother Geoffrey, Geoffrey Nkosimiti, following us from Kalulushi, Zambia. And we've got Pastor Gideon Kapaf right in South Africa. Glad to see you, man of God. Great insights, Dr. Ndrovu. Indeed, great insights. Pastor Kapaf also says, I'm enjoying this. True, we need to watch out for emotional attachments. And no one is too emotionally intelligent in dealing with this. As we begin to build it up towards a conclusion, Doc, I want us to touch on that aspect of emotional intelligence. Now, we said that as you are in an emotional affair, you identify that you are in an emotional affair. You are trapped emotionally. You've built attachments. You are making imaginations that this thing can happen. Either you are a man or you are a woman, and you are trapped also such that your will is weak. You are not able to make a very good decision. I believe at that time it is also the time for exposure. Because if you do not expose it, you are not going to have enough will to deal with it. You can pray, you can fast, you can do whatever you are doing. But if you've not exposed it to say that I'm in an emotional affair with this married man or with this married woman to another person, or with this single woman out there, or with this single man, and you are a married man, a married woman, you are a married man, you are involved with this single woman emotionally. If you do not expose it, it will definitely end in a sexual affair. And even when it becomes a sexual affair, if you do not expose it, it will continue being a sexual affair. It can last for a very long time, or you may not get out of it, even when you run away from each other, so that you keep that secret and you go distances. There will still be a struggle in your heart, to still get back to that person because you've not dealt with it. And many, many people that have been trapped into this kind of relationships fear exposing it. If I expose it to who? You can expose it to your wife, to your husband, or to your pastor, or talk to somebody, talk to a trusted friend. But the best person to expose it to is actually your partner. That's why we are advocating that you need to build marriages that are naked, marriages that you can talk about everything and anything. Actually, when a marriage is naked. A marriage is so open in terms of communication that between your husband and your wife, you are so close friends. I was telling my wife today, and my friend Valentine is watching. I believe he's still there. And I was saying to her that, there are certain things before that I could talk about to my friends, but I would not talk about them to you.
Yes.
There's certain, we're talking about certain examples that I would say to my friends, I've gone through this, I'm dealing with this, I'm struggling with that woman, and I'm feeling like this, and it's going. I would not talk about those things with my wife, but I would talk about them with my friends. But then I was saying to her that we reached a level in our marriage where we have now become friends, because it's possible also that you can be married with your husband and your wife and you're not friends. How do you know? If you cannot talk about anything, it means that your friendship has not grown. So the friendship between a wife and a woman between a wife and a husband must grow to a level where you can just share anything, share everything. If you feel that you are going through temptation of a sexual nature, you should be able to share with your husband and share with your wife. And when it is exposed, it dies, it is killed. Because when you are married, you are able to help each other prevent those things. And it's not the prevention of, hey, let me get the phone, let me shout at her, I'm going to kill him. That's not the thing. It's the prevention where, because it has been exposed, then you can deal with it between the two of you as a couple. What is it that is lacking? Why is it that you are enjoying such kind of conversation with that woman or with that man? And not with me? What is it that is lacking in the marriage that we need to do? That helps to prevent these, emotional affairs that end up being full-blown, sexual affairs. Nobody is too intelligent for emotional attachments. Nobody is too emotionally intelligent. Doc, how then do we help bring healing to those that are fallen in sin? How do we begin to bring healing to those that are fallen in sin?
First and foremost, may I also mention that when you look at developing a strong relationship with your partner, it is we must also beware that it is not just something that we are going to do on a personal level. We must also be able to revisit our cultural setup, where we are coming from. You must understand that low self-esteem is institutionalized in our cultural setup, especially where most of us are coming from. Naturally, women have a sense of a low self-esteem that is engraved in them because of certain cultural setups. It may even not just be cultural setup in terms of our traditions, but also cultural setups in terms of our churches, and also just our socio-economic situation in the nation. It has made women become more vulnerable to a point that even if you have married a woman, it's one thing for us to talk about becoming friends, but we must also beware that there must be certain traits that may block and prevent that relationship from taking place. So much that if we don't deal with that kind of challenge, we may be talking about you need to be close with each other so you can begin to share secrets. The problem there is that if we do not, first of all, deal with a sense of low self-esteem in each other, what will happen is that any communication may even end up making a sense of self-esteem be now perpetuated to a higher level. For example, if I have got a sense of low self-esteem and my wife comes to me and says to me, "Hey, can you imagine that Asha with all his muscles? He was just telling me how wonderful I look." Oh, ma. Immediately she says that. She has opened up. She has become vulnerable to me. But guess what I'm going to do? The way I view her will change. Now I'll be telling her to be staying home because I don't want her to come and meet the Asha. No, because I have a sense of low self-esteem. that
Yeah.
communication now begins to be a problem, because there's a sense of self-esteem that
Low self
eventually
esteem.
now is
Yeah.
going to make us deal with get to the point where we have to deal with the emotional intelligence and the like. Let's look
Yeah.
at that way.
Yeah.
You've talked about being vulnerable one to the other, but we
Yeah.
must first of all deal with certain aspects that we come with. For
Yes.
example, most of us, when we enter into a marital arrangement, we are
Yeah.
not aware of certain impediments and certain limitations that we
Yeah.
carry as individuals. Number
Yeah.
one, there are issues of low self-esteem. Those low
Yes.
self-esteem will do everything that they can to block you from developing a good communication relationship with your partner, because
Yeah.
you've never known what it means for somebody to stand in for you and for somebody
Yeah.
just to confide in you. Number
Yeah.
two, you look at aspects that have to do with what we discussed last time. We'll talk about them next time, which is
Yeah.
cognitive dissonances, or
Dishonest.
these
Yes. Yes.
cognitive dissonances, where the interpretation of every conversation
Yes.
gets to be taken to other extremes. We are talking
Yes.
about overgeneralization. We are talking about
Generalization.
all
Yeah.
those other kind of interpretations. So in
Yes.
general, let us just say interpretations of everything must be worked
Yeah.
on, so that
Yeah.
if a person begins to develop a communication with you, it's not because
Yes.
he wants to be playing around. Some
Yeah.
women will even say, I know why you want to be close to
Yes.
me. It's
Yes.
because when you go out, you don't want me to question. I will follow. I
Yes.
need to see
Yeah.
what you're doing there. And
Yeah.
your desire of wanting to be close to her
Yes.
is for other reasons, but because
Misinterpreted.
there are
Yes.
psychological issues at play that
Yeah.
you are not ready to
Yes.
face, now you
Yes.
begin to have a challenge.
Yeah.
So what happens is that you go to a counselor, and remember, now narcissistic behavioral patterns also begin to come in, because the
Yes.
person now begins to have a controlling effect on the
Yes.
partner. And the
Yes.
counselor is not even aware of the
Yes.
psychological aspects that are going on. There's a lot that we
Yeah.
need to unwrap in this. So now,
Yes.
here is a situation. If we are now going to talk about what you asked me and what you
Yes.
want me to talk about, let us
Yes.
also beware of
Yes.
certain psychological
Yes.
aspects
Yes.
that must be deeply looked into. People
Yes.
must beware of the limitations that they are coming with into this marital arrangement. For
Marriage.
example,
Yes.
if I want to be close to my partner, is it because I want to be a monitoring spirit?
Yeah.
That's what we used to say, or do
Yeah.
I want to be a watchdog?
Yeah. Yeah.
So sometimes I
Yeah.
want to be close because I want to look out. I want to check
Yes.
out. If so,
Yes.
that already becomes a problem.
A
So
problem. Yeah.
psychological situations must be
Yes.
taken into consideration, so that our intentions are properly defined and our interpretation of what we are getting into are
Yes.
well known. Very
Yes.
important. Now I
Yes.
can come to answer what you were talking
Yes.
about, which
Yes.
is
Yes.
we are looking at what was
Yes.
it?
Now the events of just to touch on because I was saying now the need for exposure.
And a need for
Dealing
exposure.
with
Let me come to that.
yes.
I wanted
Yes.
to talk about exposure.
Yes.
Exposure is very important, and it's on two levels.
Yes.
And it's on two levels. You
Yes.
must learn to expose a potential threat,
Yes.
and don't always look forward to exposing something when it has happened, because
Yeah.
learning how to expose something on
Yes.
its potential stage
Yes.
ends up becoming a lifestyle
Yes.
that will prevent it from happening. So
Yes.
most of the times we want just to expose the sin when it has
Yes.
taken place, but we
Yes.
must also develop certain
How-
strategies
Yes.
and processes of
Yes.
exposing a potential problem
Yes.
before it happens. For
Yeah.
example, if you are feeling a sense of being distanced from your friend, you
Yes.
begin to expose that, not
Yes.
because there's somebody that has already begun to go into a conversation with you, rather
Yeah.
than waiting
Yes.
until it's now a full-blown problem, then you
Yeah.
want to communicate.
Yeah.
Learn sometimes to say something without even feeling inferior about it. That's the nakedness you are talking about.
Yeah.
If you go to your wife and you tell her
Yeah.
to say, baby, the way these girls are behaving, I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
She must have the self-esteem that will
Yes.
never engage her, begin now to treat them
Fighting with them.
otherwise because the husband has
Yes.
exposed the potential threat.
Yeah.
She must be able now to deal with the husband on the way to say, we don't necessarily have to prevent their miniskirts because
Yeah.
we don't control their lives.
Yeah.
So as long as every time there is this miniskirt thing,
Yes.
I will make sure you have enough airtime so that you call me. So that you know that's a kind of so you don't begin to stand up and begin to say, hey, in this
Yes.
place of work, some of you are coming, you know, some guys are into what you call it's
Yes.
not only ladies, the guys are into this, what are they calling them, skin, what do they call them, a tight what are they calling them now, you know, them in
whatever.
tight pants and slim fit.
Yes.
It's called
Yes.
slim fit. Now,
Slim
some
fit.
of that slim fit is
Yes.
way beyond
Yes.
slim fit. It's
Yeah.
very expressive. It's very
Yes.
suggestive. So
Yeah.
the point is not to stop the birds from flying over your head, but to
Yes.
stop it from making a nest over your head. You can't
Yes.
go into a business of telling people what they should do, dress and how they should call you and everything. They are spoiled, most of them. So you have to have a culture in your
Yes.
relationship of
In your
exposing
marriage.
potential
Yes.
threats without
Yes.
feeling a sense of they were naked, they were not
Yes.
ashamed,
You are not
without
ashamed.
feeling a sense of shame. So you
Yes.
can talk to your partner
Yes.
without
Yes.
feeling a sense of shame. Here's a lady coming into the house to say, hey, these boys and their slim fit, the way they are putting them on, you don't feel ashamed that you are speaking to your partner and exposing a potential threat. And the partner also doesn't feel inferior to your expression. Number one. Number two, when something has ever happened, you exposing it must not be done from a perspective of he's going to use it against me, because culturally we are coming from a background in the church traditionally and also in other spheres. We are coming from a background that as a culture of getting things back at you. So every time you want to communicate with somebody, we have a tendency of basing it on past occurrences. So this is why there is no exposure. So work out a culture of communication that is not based on past occurrences.
And
This
it's
is
not
something that is
based on
very
the
important.
contamination.
Yes, because most of the people do not know that their communication is based, is pre-programmed. That's a word I was looking for. Most people are in pre-programmed communication. Even in a workplace, you can be in a workplace that is in a pre-programmed communication. Your boss cannot tell you from a perspective of the big thing that you want to do in future, but from where you messed up in the past. So mentioning what you want to do next will just be a mentioning, not will just be a reference. So now we need to get to a point where we should not feel ashamed to talk about something, because we have cultivated a culture of not judging each other based on what happened, but based on what we are committing ourselves futuristically. It's going to be a process, but it must be worked out. What would you do if your partner comes to you and tells you to say, 5 years ago, I fell into sin, and you are there? The first thing that we do, most of the people that are divorcing right now, they are not divorcing from the current affairs. No, they are divorcing from what happened way back. One guy from Swaziland, I was just seeing this situation that he married a woman, and a woman didn't tell him that she had this child, and she said, this child is for my sister. And now they are, I think, about 20 years in marriage, only to come and realize that actually this child is for this woman. So now the woman comes out and says, by the way, I thought you would not marry me if I told you this is my son. Now they are divorcing. Powerful, married, anointed, heavenly booked and confirmed. They are divorcing because now he's saying, I can never trust you ever again. But in between, you trusted her. You trusted her from the time you married her 20 years ago up to now. You trusted her in between. What then has made a difference that 20 years down the line, she has revealed something that makes you feel going forward, you cannot trust her? It's
and that
culture.
keeps people away from revealing, because I may lose something. So this thing happened 5 years ago, and
Yes.
this person decides to confess, then you judge
Yes.
them. But
Yes.
even if it happened yesterday, the reason that
Yes.
this person is confessing is because they want to stop it. And
Yes.
that's where people probably will deal with this as we conclude. And that's where people seem to misunderstand the scripture. When Jesus says that you may not divorce a woman except for sexual immorality, for adultery, taking it so literally, thinking that it's any act of adultery. But this, for a person who is repentant,
Yes.
who has committed the sexual immorality, whether it's a man or a woman, whether they did it yesterday or they did it 10 years ago, but then they are confessing it now. In fact, I believe you are a psychologist, and from the research I've done with psychologists and
Yes.
Christian psychologists, they
Yes.
all say it is better to confess than not to. And the earlier you confess, the better. And so that I've
Yes.
gone through it. It's the earlier you confess, the better. Because if you confess
Yes.
early, then
Yes.
psychologically you have not subjected your partner to a lot of doubt about the past years. And so if you
Yes.
say, I did this 7 years ago, or I did this 10 years ago, I'm confessing today, I've never done it before. What will play
Yes.
in the mind of the betrayed partner, spouse, is that, can I trust you? What else have you done which you have not told me over these past 7 years?
Yes.
So that becomes a psychological challenge. And the more you prolong
Yes.
it, the more you prolong the questioning. And also the situation is that this person who has been told by their husband or by their wife that I did this 10 years ago or 7 years ago, 5 years ago, is beginning to play it from that point. And that they are asking so many questions of mistrust and doubt. But when things have really come out at that point, what we need to understand, which most people I think need to understand, is that the confession, that especially for a person who confesses on their own, it is because they are seeking their own healing and the healing of their marriage. And nothing brings healing, even the healing of the person they betrayed. Nothing brings healing to these three people, the husband, the wife, and the marriage, than actually confessing and exposing it. Because when you expose it, you also achieve the victory. But the challenge is where people think, okay, you did this, now I will divorce you. Now this marriage cannot continue. Now they judge you. Now you are this, but you are looking for support. You are looking for help. How can couples, support each other in such events? As we, I think, wind up, how can couples support each other in this kind of situations where your
Yes.
husband or your wife confesses that they have done this thing over the past year? Maybe they had an encounter with a workmate, they had an encounter with a church member, or with a former schoolmate, a sexual encounter, which they regret. I did not say because I was ashamed, and I'm still ashamed. I'm really sorry. How do we deal with this issue in terms of forgiveness and giving marriage another chance, for better, for
Yes.
worse? Honestly, should such a marriage break, this person has not continued in that sin. They did it, yes, but they have not
Yes.
continued in it, and they have confessed because they want to prevent the sin. Should this person be, should that marriage end up in divorce? When Jesus, I believe, says that except for marital unfaithfulness, it is this continuous lifestyle of marital unfaithfulness. But when it has happened once, or it has even happened for some time, but this person comes to a place of repentance, I believe that that marriage should be given a second chance. What do you say as we wind up now?
Firstly, let's look at the marital setup in that given instance. Um, Whenever we are involved with somebody, we must not also develop a sense of attachment to them based on what we need from them, but based on
Mm.
what we want to give to them. You
Yeah.
see, how we interpret our marital engagement determines how we deal with such a problem. For example, I'm not into this marriage for what you can do for me, on for how you can compliment me, but for how I can compliment you. So much that if you fall into something, I'll never interpret, or rather, I'll never get an identity of who I am from what you have fallen into. You understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
But if my sense of being in this marriage is based on you make me, you compliment me, you are the one that makes me feel what I am. If anything ever happens to you, I am gone. What happens is that if you fall into something and you say it to me, remember, it's no longer something that you fell into. It becomes my problem, because now it's no longer your problem. And that's why the problem comes in. So the way marriages are interpreted by people who are actually involved into them, that's why it's important to make people realize the biblical standpoint of marriage. It is, husbands, die for your wives as Christ died for the church. I have to speak some things about that. So you see, you're not dying for our perfection. You are dying for our imperfection, to a point that even every time you meet with your partner, from a psychological point of view, you are not meeting for pleasure. You are meeting for sanctification. We'll go into that. And every husband must understand that the reason why you are saying tonight is tonight is not necessarily so that you may have pleasure. Pleasure is just something that comes up on top. Every act of intimacy with your wife is an act of sanctification. This is why you'll find that every time as a man you are involved with your partner, you must understand that it's about you dying to certain things about yourself. And so there are certain elements that they are coming with that you do not just tolerate. You become the solution to that. To an extent that everything that they are engaged into, both past, present, and future, is your issue to sanctify. Look at Christ himself. There is an aspect of him being the sanctifier, and he just didn't do it on the cross. He does it on an everyday basis. This is why if we begin to even understand sex, not as a pleasurable engagement, but as also mostly or foundationally a sanctification process, then even our enjoyment will be greater. You understand? So it's important that first and foremost, before I talk about wives, I talk about husbands, how they die. A man always dies. Even during that moment, I speak now. I'm not speaking as a pastor, please forgive me. I speak now as a psychologist because psychologically speaking, during their intimacy, do you know that the same kind of process that the person who dies goes through, the husband goes through that when he's having intimacy with the wife? That's why, that's why it's a hey, hallelujah, dead, finished. So we are not going to go into details. You know what I'm saying? So he is dying to her. That must always bring into remembrance who you are to her. So that if she came to you with something big, you will tell her and comfort her to say, baby, we'll deal with this. We'll get you sanctified from this. So if that can be understood, then there will be forgiveness. In other words, I forgave you even before it happened. The reason why wives submit to their husbands is not to make them egoistic. It's not to really now get them to a point where their ego now is bumped up. That's not the reason. The reason why a woman submits to the husband, it's because when a man is submitted to, he is able to, he becomes vulnerable to what submits to him. So if women are going to be submitted to their husbands, and the husband says,
for lack of a better word, they're going to control.
no. It's actually not for control. It's for the sake of dealing with limitations. A woman does not submit to you so she can control you. You see, a woman who controls you is a woman who's not submitted to you. A woman who's submitted to you will never have any element of manipulation and control in her.
A man will do anything for a woman who submits to him.
Yes, he will say, he will even tell her, how many
yes,
women he has met on the way, and he will tell her which
eh,
woman sent her love at
eh,
emoji and all
yes.
that,
And
because
now
she's
that you will never, it will not tolerate such.
that's how we are wired.
Yes,
Women
yes,
are able to open up to a man that
yes,
sanctifies them.
yeah,
So when she's talking and you are
yes,
there not talking back, she's
yeah,
getting sanctified.
yeah,
So it's not that because she feels you are dying for her.
yes. So when
So
she's
that's
talking
what
and you are
makes them,
listening to her, you are touching her heart, you are sanctifying her.
yes, yes. For them,
It-
they don't even need to
it-
go to the end part. Just
yeah,
that, the
yeah.
process. That's
And
why
then
women,
there's
they
this
have
thing
their
I noticed,
destination
like
in the process.
there's this glow that comes out of a woman. Sometimes I'll be looking at my wife and I'm like, there's this glow that you're seeing come out of her,
Yes,
which looks like it's a mystery, but maybe it is coming from those kind of situations where
yes,
she's just happy, and
yeah,
because so it's what my wife and I call love with a pure heart, and I
yes.
like the way
And then
you.
before you go right there,
Yes,
you
yes,
must learn to tolerate the stupidity of your wife as a man.
yes,
You
yes,
see, women must bring
yes,
what is called their foolishness or their
yes,
stupidity out to a
yes,
man without a man having a sense of judgment on them. This is why
yeah,
women will always be girls towards a
yes.
man that sanctifies them. She will
Wow.
come, she will say some things that you what in the world are you really thinking?
Yeah,
And that is not for you to limit her or to judge her. It's
yes,
for you. You know, women sometimes can even say things about you that you never even have. You ever seen a man and a woman quarreling? When a woman says something, it will
yes,
hurt the guy to a point that he might take it to the grave because she
yeah,
knows where to say it. And the
yes,
reason why they do that is not
yeah,
so that we men must judge
yes,
them, so that we
uh,
may sanctify them.
yes,
So they are pouring their soul towards
yes,
us for us
yes,
to become the sanctifying agent.
yes,
Men in the other way now, when they are
yes,
submitted to, that's why certain choir leaders you must be very careful with as a man,
yes,
because they will know how to submit to you more
yes.
than the woman that is by your side. So you start to
More than your wife.
confess your
Yes,
weaknesses to
yes,
an agent that is submissive to you, because that's
yes,
how we are wired as men.
yeah.
So we tend
Oh,
to feel vulnerable. We can even talk about the sin we committed 20
to
years
a
ago
woman, to
to
a
a
woman,
woman who we are not married to, but we have never told the
but you
woman
cannot
we
tell.
have married.
Wow, God help us.
It's
Yeah,
exactly.
but it feels like a challenge. I think I was saying to my wife just, I think yesterday. I think it was yesterday. We were going somewhere, and I was like, it feels like it's a huge challenge for couples to reach a certain level. And I was saying, how did we reach here? But then, how do we help others to reach this kind of friendship, where you build a friendship that you can talk about anything and share anything, where you can be truly vulnerable to each other. And you mentioned that there are a lot of impediments, feelings of self-control, thinking that your life depends on the actions of interpreting. If your husband has done a wrong thing, you interpret it on yourself. Like,
Yes.
or if your wife has done a wrong thing, you interpret it on yourself. So you are failing to deal with that problem because you are personalizing their problem
Yes.
to be
Personalization.
your problem.
Yes.
If your husband cheated, for example, you have
Because you are not
personalized
beautiful.
it. They
Eh,
cheated, then you've personalized it. It is your problem. Who am I? You feel
mm,
those feelings of low self-esteem. If we can deal with that, then we can learn to support each other. If your wife
yes.
fell into a sexual sin, you personalize it, you make it your problem. Like they fell into a sexual sin because
Because
you
of
have a problem, because you are not a man enough. They went to
uh-huh.
another man because you are not a man enough.
And
When
it's not
these
that.
feelings are in you and you begin to feel, after all, there are other women who think I'm man enough. Let me get rid of this one. So even when there is a place for reconciliation and that person is repentant, but because you have personalized the problem,
Yes.
you are actually going a direction of dissolving a marriage over a
Yes.
sin that was
Exactly.
committed, and that somebody has repented, and that if you deal with, your marriage can even become better. Actually,
Exactly.
it is clear, even from research, and you're a psychologist, that those marriages that recover from
Mm.
infidelity, they actually become better, stronger, and happier
Yes.
than they were before, because they become wiser, and
Yes.
they become more open, because if they have dealt with such things and they have talked to things at that level, then they have grown to a level where they will not hide anything. But how
Exactly.
I just wish that couples would reach that level before they get into such problems, and most
Yes.
couples, yeah, just end up going into that. Maybe we'll conclude here, but before you say your last words, Doc, I want to recommend something to our
Yes.
listeners and those that are going to
Yes.
view this video on YouTube, we're going to view it on Facebook, and wherever you are. I want to recommend you to do a YouTube search, or you can go and Focus on the Family America, a particular organization called Focus on the Family, or just on YouTube, you can search directly for the words marriage undercover. You can search for marriage undercover, or you can look for this book written by the Messners, Meisners. The Messners. This is a couple. I've just missed their face. I think the husband's name is Bob Robert, but I've missed the wife's name. But if you search for Marriage Undercover on Amazon, you can get a book entitled Marriage Undercover, written by the Messners. And you can also just Google marriage undercover, and you'll be able to get the clear names of this couple. From what Dr. Njovu has just said, how the husband dealt with the wife's infidelity, how it demonstrated this love from that angle, where he did not personalize the problem and made the
Yes.
wife's. In fact, their infidelity was so bad that this is a pastor, a pastor who is leading a church, the pastor's wife, who is actually a pastor herself, because they met in the Bible college, and they were not leading a small church, leading a big church. They had a television ministry, and this woman fell into sexual immorality with a church member, a young man. And it was not just sexual immorality after a marriage of 17 years. It was not just sexual immorality, but
There
it
was a
was
child.
actually a child was born out of it. That's how bad it was. But then there is this sanctifying effect that
Yes.
Dr. Njova has talked about, where this husband stood with the wife. It was not easy, but he was able to deal with the problem and save the marriage and keep the family up to today. They are still alive today, and up to
Yes.
today, they have been married for over, I think, 40 years,
Yes.
regardless of having gone through that experience. But that could just help us to understand in other areas. And we are not saying you should listen to it because you've gone through infidelity. But if you can learn how to deal with problems from this couple, there's no problem that you will not fail to deal with. Because
Exactly.
sometimes marriages break because of financial problems, because of just a little quarreling here and there, a few misunderstandings, because you ended up becoming violent and physical on each other, because you are failing to resolve issues. But if a big issue as infidelity, not done once, but over a period of time, which leads to a pregnancy, which produces a baby born out of wedlock
Good luck.
by a woman, and the man comes out and brings forgiveness, then it will help us to understand that there is nothing that we can fail to deal with those that we love, if we are committed
Yes.
to building strong marriages and stable families. So,
Yes.
concluding remarks, Dr. Njovu, just your concluding remarks.
I think I would conclude from the conclusion itself, where we begin to talk about why we are involved in marriage. We must be able to redefine marriage in order for us to engage certain techniques and processes on dealing with the problems that marriage comes with. First and foremost, we must understand that we are into this marriage not because we are trying to escape something, but because we want to be value others to the marriage and to the other person. Because the moment we begin to make it about the other person, not about ourselves, is the moment that we begin to make marriage valuable. But in most given cases, we are into marriage for what I can get out of this. And this is why it's very easy to find a way out, because we are not into this sacrificially. We are into this for benefits. So it's relationship with benefits. Most marriages are not into it for them to make the other person better. For example, if you get married to somebody and you realize that they have a physical challenge that may not make them really be forthcoming in that marriage, or they have a particular limitation in their lives, are you looking at yourself as a solution to their situation, or you are looking at yourself as a victim of what they are coming up
Wow.
with?
Wow.
Because in most given cases, most of us are victims of the other person that we are involved in marriage with. And that's where the problem comes in, because as long as you view yourself as a victim, everything that happens on the marriage ground becomes a
Yeah.
problem. Even if
Yeah.
it is meant to advance your marriage, it works as to an adversity to your marriage. So it's
Yeah.
important that we do that. Lastly, I would like us to also reiterate the importance of listening to information that will enhance our marriages. Social
Yeah.
media has brought a lot of things. Currently, you are exposed to how everybody is talking about the other gender being whatever and so on and so forth. And so,
Yeah.
what is happening is that whatever conversations, you may not be having a conversation with an individual, you may be having a conversation with a system. Can I say
Yes.
that before we
Yeah.
go? You know, you
Yeah.
may not be having a conversation with an individual, you may be having social intercourse with a system. Some
Yes.
people are having social intercourse with Mwebantu,
Yeah.
that media. Yeah. Some people
Yeah.
are having social intercourse with
With Mr. Mwanza. Because Mr. Mwanza
you
is a
said it. I
system.
never said it. You said it. So you see, what
Sorry.
is happening is
Yeah.
that some
Yeah.
people are not even aware that you may not be having social intercourse with an individual, but with a
Yeah.
system,
Yeah.
which will eventually also play out to be
Yeah.
infidelity of some sort. Because at
Yeah.
some given point in time, you will never even realize that the brokenness of your marriage will come
Yeah.
from the system that you are engaging with, you are
Yeah.
having social intercourse with.
Yeah.
WhatsApp can become a social intercourse thing. You are
Yeah.
always up there. So if you're going to spend 5 hours on WhatsApp daily, what's going to happen is that it's going
Yeah.
to cause a rift within your marriage. So
Marriage.
these
Yeah.
are some of the things that we need to bring to the fore and be able to. You can be doing a right thing wrongly. For
Yeah.
example, if you are sending scriptures the whole day on
Yeah.
WhatsApp,
Yeah.
and it's a good thing that you're doing, but you are engaged in social intercourse,
Yes.
doing the right thing. So
Yes.
we must be able to understand these things and expose ourselves to what will enhance us and advance us. We are not in a competition. We are into
Yeah.
complementing the other party. So
Yeah.
make sure that the next day you look at your partner, you don't look at John Cena and you don't look at the Undertaker
Beyond.
on the other side. We are not here
Yeah.
for competition. We're here to complement. And remember, you are not here to outshine the other. You are
Yeah.
here to help the other. And
Wow.
remember,
Yeah.
what made you much more committed to the other person is not their strengths, but their
Yeah.
weaknesses.
Yes.
So the bigger the weakness, the more committed you are, because you are on assignment, not to
Wow.
assassinate. You are on
Yeah.
assignment to propel somebody into their greatness. Those are my last remarks.
Wow. Thank you so much. Don't look at yourself as a victim,
Mhm.
uh, but look at yourself as a solution
Yes.
to complement your partner. You are
Mhm.
there to complement them. So be involved in their lives, and don't look at yourself as a victim of their moral failure,
Yes.
but look at yourself as a support system, as
System.
a solution as somebody, of course, we are not saying, we know that there are situations in marriages where somebody's moral failure is beyond repair. They are not repentant, they are arrogant. And we are not talking about that, because we misunderstand this thing. Like you can be in an abusive marriage. If you are married to a man or a woman who is unrepentant in infidelity, that is an abusive marriage. That is not health. That
No,
is
that,
not
that,
a
that
marriage
is
that is
actually
staying. That is
somebody
a
that's got
different thing.
a psychological problem. You are
Psychological
married
problem.
to
Yes.
a sick person. So
It's-
first of all, you must heal the sick person before
yes.
you begin to work out the marriage.
So if they cannot get healed, then it's better to walk out. But in a situation where this is a person who is seeking healing and they need your support, you need to be there for them. So we should not think in extremes, like we are supporting people to stay in marriages just because our own marriages are working. So we are encouraging people to stay in marriage at any cost. No, but our prayer is that every marriage should actually work. And it takes your commitment to it. It's not what you are getting out of it, it's what you are putting into the marriage that makes a marriage work. Most people go in marriage thinking about what they're going to get out of it. I've always said this: marriage has got nothing in it. It is what you take there into the marriage that makes it work. And it is a commitment of you. I love what Dr. Job said. Don't look at yourself as a victim of whatever your partner may have done, or something that has happened to your marriage through your partner, but look at yourself as a solution. How can I help my husband? How can I help my wife overcome this? And this will be a victory for our marriage, and therefore a victory for our family. Thank you for listening. God bless you. We are here every Monday lunchtime at 13 hours. Zambian, Central African, South African time, lunchtime conversation on fight for the family. Now, next week, I'll bring Dr. Njovu again, and we are going to deal with the issue of alcohol addiction and drug addiction. Many marriages are going through serious struggles because of alcohol, because of drugs. And we want to touch that area, and then we'll see how God leads us. But it is our prayer that every marriage grows stronger. And we pray for your marriage, we pray for your husband, we pray for your wife, and we pray that every marriage would become a naked marriage, where a husband and a wife are so free to each other. They are friends that are able to share each and everything that they have gone through in the past, and that they are going through currently, and that a husband and a wife will be a support system to each other that keeps them together, that helps them win battles together by the grace of God, and that keeps a marriage intact and keeps a family stable. May God richly bless you. Thank you for following. Dr. Job, just remain, don't escape the studio, just remain a little bit.